First of all, I must say that both of those gentlemen are brilliant. I admire their brilliance. I am intrigued when I read their stuff. They give me great ideas. They make me think, and I appreciate them a great deal. However, there's always a however, right? However, in my opinion, Dyson and Cornel West and others, while they are brilliant and while they make great contributions to us, in my opinion, they are operating on out-of-date software. They're like what's the latest computer chip today? The Pentium 7 or whatever it is. It's like a Pentium 6 computer running DOS 1.0. Okay. See, the old, what I mean by the old software is this, that if you go back to the late 60s and early 70s, all the barriers, almost all the barriers we faced as a people came from outside of us. They were external to us. It was racism, it was discrimination, it was whatever, And we were right to fight against those things. And the kind of things that they have to say were very powerful in combating those things. Mm-hmm. Today, while racism is still alive, it's still with us, it is not nearly the obstacle it used to be. Okay. And I would say for African Americans today, most of the resistance to our progress come from within. It is not so much, if racism could be eliminated today, 99% of our problems would still be there. And the reason for that is that we're not in a crisis of racism so much. Though racism, I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. It does exist. It's there. Right. But the bulk of our problem today, I think, is we have a cultural crisis. We have a cultural crisis. And I don't hear Dyson or West or any of these guys addressing that cultural crisis. Now, I remember one book that I found very interesting. Remember about 10 years ago, Bill Cosby gave that speech. Everybody calls it the pound cake speech. Mm-hmm. And some people are now calling it the Gettysburg Address, at the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And Dyson and Cosby made some criticisms of some folks in our community. Right. And Dyson comes out and writes this book, Was Bill Cosby Right or Has the Black Middle Class Lost Its Mind? Now again, brilliant categorization, brilliant articulation, and all the rest of that. But the problem was that Dyson totally missed it, is in my opinion, in that Cosby was addressing the failures of the non-achiever culture among us. Every people group in the developed world has achievers and non-achievers. And he was criticizing the fact that the non-achievers among us have not, quote, lived up to their end of the bargain. Now, he happened to use economic categories to identify the non-achievers. Dyson jumps on Bill Cosby and says he's just criticizing poor people. It wasn't poor people he was criticizing people who were non-achievers, because I know some rich people who have lived by those same values. And I know some poor people who live by achiever values, you see. So Cosby was in essence, Cosby didn't have his terminology quite right, he didn't identify it clearly, but I knew what he was talking about, I recognized. And for all of Dyson's brilliance, he didn't see that. I don't understand that. So yes, he's I would agree with Dyson in that if Cosby was just criticizing poor people, then yes, he needs to be criticized. Cosby does need to be criticized, but Cosby was not just criticizing people on the basis of economics. He was seeing a value system, a culture of poverty, and so what's happened is that this racism piece is diminished in size, and we're putting all of our energy to fight this racism. But there's this huge, we're straightening out the gnat and swallowing the camel. There's this huge cultural crisis that we're in. And the crisis is simply this, that while most African Americans, 88, 85, 88% of us are achievers. That is, we live by achiever values.
Mm-hmm.
A small minority of us live by non-achiever values. And generally speaking, when you have both groups in a population, it's the achievers who are the dominant ones. It's achievers who provide the leadership. It's the achievers who set the trends. What's happened in the African American context is that has been reversed. The non-achievers have become the dominant group. The non-achievers are setting the trends. And that's our cultural crisis. And so we're fighting this little racism piece when we've got this whole cultural crisis. That's the bulk of the problem. And I don't hear these guys addressing that. As I said, they're running on out-of-date software. It's DOS 1.0.
Okay.
Brilliant computers, bad software. So again, I critique these guys with a sense of deep respect. I respect their intellect, I really do, and I enjoy the way they make me think. And so I do appreciate them, but I just say, well, again, here's the point. Nothing they say can be as radical as what the Bible says. I remember somebody asked me, what did I think of liberation theology? And I said, it's not radical enough. Liberation, the Bible talks about liberation and transformation. Liberation theologians just talk about liberation. It's just not radical enough. And so, while I appreciate everything they say, I just find Jesus to be far more radical.